Welcome to Podlygamists, the Sister Wives Rewatch podcast.
We sit down each week and recap an episode of TLC's longest-running reality show, following the Browns, a Mormon polygamous family originating in Lehi, Utah.
I'm Samantha Kaiser.
And I'm Haley Graff.
And this is Podlygamists.
Season 2 bonus episode, Keep Sweet, Pray and Obey, Part 2. Well, so basically, we're picking up where we left off last time with Part 3 of the documentary Keep Sweet. Basically, the Part 2 ended with Warren Jeffs taking off to Texas because he was being investigated, which we didn't mention in the last episode, but that's okay.
I mean, it's hard. There's a lot at play in all these between the testimony and the plot line, if you want to call it that. So, I mean,
so these might be a little like all over the place, but we're trying to be organized. So just go and watch it too. So then you, if you want to watch it, that is. Yeah. So we'll do another. I'll just say trigger warning. This episode as well. Anything with like abuse, sexual abuse, child abuse, cults. Just trigger warning. Just keep that in mind if you are watching or listening. But yeah, so it did end. The Part 2 episode ended with, Warren Jeffs is being more investigated by Sam, the private investigator, and Mike, the journalist. They're kind of closing in a bit, trying to see what's going on with the community. So Warren, like the coward that he is, runs off to Texas and starts building a compound there.
So yeah, he's basically scouting a lot of property and constructing his little Mecca, his little Zion, they call it.
Yeah.
And we talked about this a little bit because, like, you think of Texas and all these like compounds and like cult situations because there's also Waco, and we kind of were like, well, it's kind of a place where there's a lot of like mind your own business. Like if they're out in the desert area, rural, doing something, they're kind of like that guy's land. He's doing what he wants to do. Not gonna ask any questions.
Huge. Like I don't think we even fully comprehend how big Texas is.
Yeah,
like it's bigger than a lot of European countries. So, like they've got the room to be out in the middle of nowhere doing some shit if they wanted to.
Isn't there even like a kind of like a little snippet from someone who had flown over and seen it being built?
And was shocked at how big this compound is. They're like, this is not normal. That whatever they're building here is weird.
And like in the middle of nowhere. It's not like they're building a Walmart, you know?
Right. Where it'd be like right next to town building a big Walmart. Mm-hmm. Like, no, this is in the middle of nowhere and they're building this massive building.
Mm-hmm.
Like for what? And they're very secretive about it, and there's gates and stuff up and clearly it's weird.
Yeah.
They're getting more and more insular with the compound. And Warren then starts calling out other male leaders in the group, including 4 of his brothers.
Convenient. Yeah.
Super convenient. Mm-hmm. So they're, basically saying how, they disagreed with him and they sinned against the Lord by disagreeing with him, naturally. So he started removing them. And that's where his brother Wallace, we've been listening to his interviews, has been kicked out then as well during this time.
It's almost like they know too much about him, so they have to be eliminated so that they can't expose him, sort of thing. Like they're too familiar with his mortality and his like the fact that he's a human who was a kid and a weird kid and not just always this prophet. Do you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's interesting, to be like, no, actually, he was like this gawky little weirdo who may seem really powerful right now, but...
like, shut up, Warren. Like a brother would be like, you know what I mean? Like just that same culture. Like they know how fallible he is, so they have to be phased out, essentially.
And do we know, is Wallace older than him, or...
I don't know. I think he does mention in that first episode when we kind of get the family tree, but I don't know. And it's probably hard to say given the amount of wives and kids that are in that family. So
God,
he seems younger. If I had to guess, he seems younger.
Might have been.
Maybe it's just like the lack of evil that hasn't aged him
He
as
doesn't
much.
have that dead behind the eyes look, so I
Yeah,
mean, it really adds like makes him youthful.
some youth. Yeah.
So Alicia, who we have met in the first 2 episodes, who was previously married to Rulon, she talks about how closed off the society has become, that she didn't even know who the president was or anything like that.
Hmm.
But during this time, she gets a little period of happiness actually for herself because she marries Leroy Jeffs, or
Hmm.
Leroy. I think they say Leroy,
Yeah.
um, who she was not his first wife or anything. She was one of his plural wives, but she actually was really quite in love with him
Yeah, he was kind to her, and they had like a good friendship and relationship.
and had children and stuff. And she, I think, kind of felt like she was sort of his favorite wife
Yep.
of his others. And
Hmm.
this was like sort of the first time she ever really felt happy, I guess, in any kind of relationship at the very
Hmm.
least. But of course, that was not to last because then Warren kicked him out.
Yeah, it's just one of the brothers that kind of goes to the wayside out of convenience for the most part. But it's so sad because this her story really is about like true love and trying to like achieve that, and it just keeps being taken from her and like in sad and depressing ways.
Yeah, I mean, because she has a few kids with him, and
Hmm.
then was told once Leroy was kicked out of the community that she was basically then given to his younger brother Seth to marry, and then told to never mention Leroy again, to not like that wasn't her children's father. She never, just pretend like he never existed.
Hmm. Yeah, and the fact his name is Seth. This is not like the most important part, but doesn't that just seem like and Seth, like what? Warren, Rulon, Watson, whatever,
Seth.
and Seth and Tyler. Like it
Okay.
just seems like one of those like I don't know.
Okay.
Side note.
Clearly a different, maybe a different wife named that one. Who knows?
Yeah, more modern.
Right. So Warren and his stupid little compound in Texas, stupid huge compound in Texas, is calling it Zion. And so they kind of, Alicia sort of goes in to explain the significance of Zion in the Mormon faith.
Yep. I mean, it's just kind of their holy, their like highest place, their heaven. I mean, the Zion National Park is like kind of named
Mm.
for it as well.
True.
Um, you know, I don't know. It's
It's
didn't
like
have
the
anything.
Mecca, or, I
Yeah.
guess. Like,
Yep.
and like only the worthy are invited there.
Hmm.
But
They start to like recruit groups of people to start populating Zion. Essentially, I don't know how to say
and
that.
by, I guess, and by groups of people, it's mostly children.
Children to be like it reminds me of this is maybe like not the most appropriate comparison, but it reminds me of the like the term is escaping me, but the schools that they like kind of kidnapped Native American children and sent them to be like
Oh.
to be
Oh, what are those schools called?
yeah,
Shit.
what assimilation, so
Is
to
that
be
what it's called?
assimilated. Doesn't seem like the word I was looking for, but basically like there's like the Carlisle Indian School or whatever, and it reminds me it just reminds me of like indoctrinating. Maybe that's the word I'm looking for. Like to really indoctrinate these kids as early and as like intensely as possible into this culture, because then those are the ones that are the hardest to crack. That's the only world they know, and these are the authority figures that are teaching and guiding them, and so like they're gonna buy into it wholeheartedly. There's no questioning it,
Yum.
and
Oh, it's,
so
it's
they're really
residential schools.
oh, okay, residential.
Yep.
Um, yeah,
They're like
and
boarding schools.
just yeah, essentially brainwashing schools for these kids and to really create loyal foot soldiers. Like they're thinking long term here. This is what's gonna. If they had had 15 more years of this of free of their community of this life, like I bet they would have that would have been the end of that. Like they would have had a whole generation of loyal believers who would really do anything for and not have a thing to compare it against.
Yeah. And I mean,
Thankfully,
like
I
they
mean,
talk about, we've got, I don't think we've discussed her in the previous episode, but Charlene Jeffs. And I couldn't tell if she was a sister of Warren or if she was like one of the wives
I
into the
think she was a
Jeffs
wife.
family.
I think she was a wife.
Okay.
I'm double checking that. Charlene married Lyle Jeffs and
Okay.
became the first of his 9 wives. Yep. That was a cheat
So
sheet.
she's also left the community, and so she's talking about then her husband was making these road trips and not telling her where he was going. So she was pretty smart about this, that she would read the odometer before he left and then read it
Yep.
when he came back and then use like a, what are those things called?
Compass, right?
Compass thing.
She created like a bubble around where they are and how where he could get from however many miles away it was.
Yeah, and so
Yeah,
she means
she was
she'd
a
be
real
like, okay, so it's either this place, this place, this place, and then she'd look at the color of the mud on his truck to deduce like what areas had that color soil. Like,
yeah,
very smart.
yeah. Yeah,
And
I mean, she too. They interviewed a little earlier, and she was kind of on to this. She kind of sniffed the bullshit out like early. I mean, she's still in the community. She didn't leave right away, but she talks about looking at her husband and being like, "This is not right. Something is very wrong here." And I guess
yeah,
being that she was married to a Jeffs, she probably had some insight. He probably had some insight as to Warren's crap. You know what I mean? His like
right,
dishonorable tendencies.
right.
But yeah, she
I
was a
mean,
sleuth.
so that like they're doing this whole populating Zion in
Mhm.
Texas at the compound, and Charlene talks about that there were stories of children just being taken basically from their beds in the night by their dads, and given to Warren to take to Zion, and the mothers, waking up in the morning, going to wake up their children, and them not being in their beds and not knowing anything that happened to them, and the
Mhm.
fathers basically just being like, never mind, don't bring it up again,
Yeah.
which is horrifying.
Yeah. It's got to be the most intense. And yet there's still no questioning it, and yet later when the whole thing kind of comes down, they still like go on the stand for him. Not literally, I don't think, but like they still have this PR campaign of like, we were just minding our own business, we were just living our lives. You know what I mean? They're like undyingly loyal, even though their children were kidnapped out of their beds and taken to an unknown location with no explanation.
Yeah,
You know?
I mean, I have no experience being in a cult, thank goodness. So I can't say what it's like, to be that brainwashed. But I think there has to be something that's like the point of no return, though. Like
Hmm.
something that happens to you that you're like, wait, no, actually, this isn't okay. That you just feel like in your gut,
Yeah.
no matter I mean, I guess, if you've been brainwashed since birth and you really don't have any of those instincts or aren't used to listening to those instincts, but I just feel like primally there has to be like something that's not even like mental, like subconscious, like it's subconscious in your head that you just feel it as being
Yeah.
off. So it just is astounding that more of them didn't have that, I guess.
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, I think they've already given everything else over to this, and it's maybe at this point, it's hard to imagine, but maybe it's just not that big of a stretch at that point to like, they already know that they're not their own property, these women, and their children are really the property of whoever they're married to, not even necessarily their father, because if the father passes away, they're reassigned. Or,
Right.
if he's not even passes away but is excommunicated, you know what I mean? Like they are not their own in this community as it stands.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
I guess if you don't have autonomy for your own self, then why the hell would you have it
yeah,
for your children even,
right,
unfortunately? But
yeah,
it's quite
shocking, yeah.
odd to think about.
Hmm.
But yeah, so basically, showing them making their way to the ranch, the ranch called Yearning for Zion Ranch. And they this is like a little thing, but it's so weird. Like all the girls are out, in their pioneer dresses, but they're all just like digging up cactuses
Hmm. It's
because the
bleak.
cactuses are cursed.
Yeah, it's pretty bleak.
Like that probably was the most fun part of their day.
Yeah, at least they're like doing something
They're
physical
outside.
outside in the desert. Yeah,
And
yeah.
I was just like, okay, sure. I don't know what Warren had against the cactuses, but they just looked at him funny, I guess. I don't know.
They just needed a task. He's like, what can I make these girls do?
Like, there's a
That
lot of cactuses out here.
keeps them
Let's
out of my
just
hair for a few hours.
right. They talk about all these little girls, going to Warren's stupid compound and saying, "Oh well, age doesn't matter because we're just more mature."
Yeah, they say like they're not the same as other women or whatever. They're not the same as like other girls because they in their culture they're like bred to mature early. Like essentially is what they're saying. Like
Yeah,
which is just utterly bullshit.
bullshit.
You know what I mean? It's just like how can you? What about you makes you think that you're developmentally more mature than like any other human? It's not like you're like they're not like that insular. They're not there on an island for thousands of years where they really are like genetically different from every other American, basically. You
And I
know?
mean, given that they don't know any other Americans, how could you possibly say you're more mature if you've never met them
Yeah, yeah.
or
It's just, I mean,
seen them on
they believe
TV?
what they're told, and that's what they were told, I guess. So whatever. I guess we can't like really put
We can't logic
visually.
that one out,
There's
but
yeah,
yeah.
exactly. We can't. Yeah.
But yeah, so naturally he's building this weird massive temple on the property, which looked kind of didn't it look sort of like a Middle Eastern kind of temple? Isn't that like kind of the style
Like a
of Mormon
mosque.
temple?
They're very like I don't want to say minimalist because it's like maximalist, but it's very like sterile.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
mean they look like kind of like Arab style, um which maybe is the like they're trying to model it
The
after
temple. Yeah.
like Bethlehem or something. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, they're very into like a impressive clean presentation. So I guess like it's like the Salt Lake City temple or whatever it's called is also kind of has that look. It's just I guess whatever looks impressive is what they're kind of going for.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I
It's
don't
just
know the version
interesting to
model.
see the difference between like Catholic like cathedrals and
Mhm.
then
Yeah.
this.
Which are ornate and
Yeah,
these are like you don't want to say industrial, but like kind of industrial. I don't know.
they're more it's like cement almost. And I
Yeah.
don't maybe it's cuz they're in sort of like a desert environment.
Yeah. And the fact that it like doubles as like a bunker essentially, so like that's got to be
Yeah,
pretty sturdy. I
that
don't know.
too.
We'll
Had
get
that in
there, I
mind, I
guess.
guess.
Yeah.
um Next thing I had was Elisa when she was like learning to drive and ended up meeting Lamont.
I don't
Do you
recall
recall
Lamont.
that? What?
No.
Oh, that was kind of important.
Okay. Well, refresh me.
Okay, well, I thought you would remember that one. um, so Elisa, reminder that we talked about last time that Rebecca, her
Mhm.
sister, left the community, but Elisa is still there, married, and unhappily married to her abusive husband.
Mhm.
And at this point, like she's got to be like 16 really. She's
Yeah.
had multiple miscarriages and stuff at her age, and um, has been abused her whole marriage. For she's been married for like 3 years now or so, I think, at this time.
Mhm.
um, but so basically though she's starting to gain a little bit of independence. She did learn to drive and then got a job at a restaurant that was run by FLDS people,
Mhm.
so obviously it was still okay that she was in the community, but she at
Yeah.
least had a job and was earning some money for herself.
Mhm.
But basically one night she's on her way home from work and she got a flat tire, and then was met on the road by this guy named Lamont who helped her out changing her tire, and he was in the community and stuff too. But so she just like they fell for each other. Real meet cute there, I guess.
Mhm.
Him helping her out, and so then she started. I don't. I mean, who knows how far anything went, whatever, but spending time with Lamont. Like they have a lot of pictures of them out hanging out together,
Uh-huh.
and but at this point, then her husband inevitably finds one of the photos, and she gets called into a meeting with Warren and everything. Well, actually, I don't know if it was with Warren.
Seems likely.
She gets called into a meeting about it, and they have the picture of her and Lamont, and she's accused of adultery. And it was just a really difficult pill to swallow because she's saying, like, basically after all this time that she's been raped and abused, that she's the one that gets labeled as wicked
Mm-hmm.
naturally,
Mm-hmm.
being the woman. So then she ends up though leaving at this point, and she leaves with Lamont, leaves the community.
Oh.
So that good. I don't know if they were still together present day or anything like that. They didn't
Yeah.
mention it, but she at least for this period of time was able to leave and actually had a relationship that she felt safe in and that made her happy. So that's awesome. So a little spot of joy.
She still goes by Watts, so I'd be surprised if she was with Lamont, I guess, but maybe. I mean, regardless of if it works out or not, it was like her ticket to freedom, that like little love.
And she was at least happy for a while with it. So
Yeah.
she
And
deserves
it
that.
gave her it gave her the courage to leave. Um so yeah. I do remember that. It's funny, I do remember that, but it's so vague, and I feel like it's because so many big dark things just are what populates my memory of this show, like that
Yeah.
little like unfortunately
Brief moment
isn't
of light.
yeah, isn't what sticks with me, unfortunately.
Gotta cling to those apparently in this
Yeah,
documentary.
for sure. I mean, I don't know that we even get another one necessarily besides
I'll
like
say
the
I have like a happy note at the end, I guess, that I thought
yeah,
of, but to
okay.
try to
Good. Good.
brighten the outlook.
Good. Yeah, I was gonna say the only other thing I could think of is like the friendship of Ruby and
Right. And
yeah,
Elisa.
Elisa.
Uh, but yeah, I mean, like this is significant though too. Is that Elisa, when she leaves the community, she starts working with law enforcement of them trying to find enough evidence to prosecute Warren, and first off to just find that fucker. Um,
Yep.
because again, he's running off. He's in Texas. Turns out he's doing a little more than that. But we have him then on the FBI's 10 most wanted list.
With like Osama bin Laden, right? Or I get him confused with Hussein. I can never remember. I get
think
those
and
two
then there
mixed
was
up.
Saddam Hussein. Well,
Saddam Hussein.
yeah, I think he was.
There's
So
one
that
that was
shows the level that this guy's at.
yeah.
But yeah,
Um,
here's where he's got his weird little joy ride vacation.
yeah. So like I don't know if he's like if it's either like brazen confidence or it's like one last hurrah, but he goes on like months long vacation where he goes to Disneyland, watches a lot of porn, experiments sexually quite a bit. There's a lot of like
Mardi
really
Gras.
living yeah, Marty. Just a lot of like hilarious, but also like hilarious in a dark humor way of like all these pictures of him and the family at Disney, him on the road, him on the truck stop or whatever, like
Wearing normal
vacation photos,
clothes.
wearing
Probably
like
like
yeah,
a
street
tourist
clothes.
t-shirt, got Mickey
Yeah,
Mouse on it or something. Like,
yeah, yeah. It's hilarious. It's comical and it's not. It's
yeah.
just
Because you're just like, what? I mean, well, and like seriously, the audacity of this guy though to be on FBI's 10 most wanted list, and he's like, well, better go to Disneyland.
yeah. Hiding in plain sight. I mean, when he gets dressed up like a tourist, he does look like kind of any other nerdy dad. He
Yeah,
just unless you know who you're looking for, you wouldn't be like, "There's something about this guy." You might if
yeah,
you looked into his eyes, but like if he's just kind
yeah.
of passing you by in the street, you wouldn't like
Wouldn't give him a second glance,
know. Yeah,
but I mean, it just shows clearly didn't seem to care too much. I guess that he was so
either got kind of high on his own supply, sort of thing. Like is drinking his own. He believes his own
he drank his
power.
own Kool-Aid. Like,
Yeah, like he just believed he was more. He really just he got used to being all powerful and didn't realize like the outside world would find him
hmm.
or what. I don't know.
But and he has his brother, well, Seth, who is now Alicia's husband.
Hmm.
Um, Seth has been sneaking money to him, and they said some exorbitant number. I think like 300,000
Yeah.
a week. I thought,
Hmm.
which
Something like that was like unfathomable. I don't have the number in front of me, but it was like, how could you possibly
come up with that? Like,
come up with that and spend that?
yeah. Well, what
Like,
do you need this for? I mean, like a week, not even a
I mean,
month.
Disney's expensive, but
But that's next level there. Like, what are you
Hmm.
doing? Just buying gold bars every day? Like, what the heck?
Yeah, like stockpiling, maybe. I don't know.
I mean, maybe you have the stupid temple. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, so like episode 3 ends on 2 important notes. First one is that Alicia's children get taken to Zion, which is very, very emotional and sad. That she like didn't want them to go, but also she didn't really do much to stop it because she was so in the faith, and
Hmm.
like she has called herself a people pleaser, and
Hmm.
I mean, who is she to dissent, basically, I guess,
Hmm.
at the point of time that she was at in life, I guess. I don't know. So that it was just very difficult that she lost her husband and then
Yeah.
her children. So that sucked. But then I guess on a more triumphant note is Warren finally gets arrested at the end of the episode. Gets pulled over, just dry bud. Gets pulled over for in the car with his brother and one of his wives. But they were
Hmm.
pulled over because the license plate was partially obscured. But you think
Yeah.
they would have really made sure, like our
They
headlights are
were
all
confident.
working. We're gonna drive the speed limit, like all that. But
Yeah, they were confident. I mean, can you imagine? There's so many stories like that where you just imagine like you're just a traffic cop and you're pulling someone over for some run of the mill like expired plates or whatever, and then you come across Warren Jeffs in the back seat.
like, oh, we hit the jackpot here, actually.
Yeah. Yeah, right.
Like, okay. And I mean, they were sort of like they told Elisa, that they had caught him, and she still was like not really believing it because that just
Mhm.
seemed sort of unlikely that they'd been searching for him for however long.
Yeah, and like you get used to the deception. Like everything is a test, everything is a trap. You know what I mean? Like she probably didn't feel safe believing that he was captured.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, but so then starting up the final part
Mhm.
of the docu-series here, we've got Warren in jail finally, but still running the joint,
Yeah.
dictating all his words to his brother Nephi. It's
Isn't
like the
that one of
angel.
the like the angels or something from
Isn't that the
the
one that
story?
visited? No, that's Moroni.
Moroni. Yeah, I'm not
Moroni.
gonna try to recall the theology right now, I guess, but that does sound
It's
like it
a
came from
name.
somewhere.
It's important name in Mormon history.
Yeah, or maybe even yeah. Anyways, moving on.
It's like an
He's
angel
basically
or whatever.
he's
But
basically still like puppeting the church. Nephi,
ugh,
son of Lehi, and Lehi is
where the Browns are from.
where the Browns are from, and some sort of prophet. The Nephite people. Yep. Okay. Phew.
So
Glad
that's
we
his
cracked
brother.
that nut. Anyways, he's now running the show.
Yeah, I mean, really creepily dictating the words of God. He's like, God is telling me this to
Hmm.
you, and so creepy. And then he starts singing on the prison phone, and I was
Yeah.
like, please stop.
Yeah.
That was creepier than the children singing, sir. Like,
Something about the singing in this, they just it's like a big element of the culture, or just something that Warren Jeffs really enjoys. I don't know.
I'm like, I don't. I really want to know. Did he write that song like on the spot, or was he just like making it up in his cell and like, this will be great once I get him on the phone to sing my word?
Yeah. Yeah. So I wouldn't. I mean, he's got time in there. He's probably
Right?
conducting all kinds of music.
Creepy,
Hmm.
real creepy. But Elisa then is set to testify in court as Jane Doe number 4,
Hmm.
which is again super brave of her to do so because they have supporters of Warren kind of hanging out around the courthouse,
Yeah.
with guns and stuff.
They're like mobsters, his like kind of cronies, sort of, that are there to scare people into conforming or to not speaking up.
I mean, you could just see it. Like, I'm glad it didn't happen. But you could just see it, like her walking to the courthouse and getting like sniped.
Hmm.
Just so
Yeah.
she wouldn't be able to speak. Like that's terrifying. Like,
Yeah, the bravery that she had to do it. Yeah.
but yeah, basically, and I loved this part was probably for me, the most powerful part of the documentary is that when Alicia does go into court, she made eye contact with Warren right away and stared him down until he looked away. And it was just that moment of her being like, "You don't have power over me
Yep.
anymore." Um, and like the documentary, they kind of show it like his eye, those dead eyes, where you can just see what she was seeing, making eye contact with him. But I was like,
Hmm.
again, this girl is brave, like to face somebody down like that who's been your abuser,
Yeah.
orchestrator of your abuse your whole life.
Turn the tables on him and pull the power move of the stare down. It's almost that's like primal, that stare down until they look
I'm
away.
so glad she didn't back down in
Yeah.
that moment.
Yep.
I guess it's where they start kind of removing the children from.
Yeah. And this is where I think it comes into my like awareness is these like 2020 interviews and like Dateline specials that come out as a result of the children being removed from the compound, and like they have the moms, the loyal followers who are the mothers, like interviewing with Diane Sawyer and talk and basically pleading that they are just mind their business and there's nothing, these are their children and they've been taken away and blah blah blah, like they're not doing anything wrong to them.
And using that, as Rebecca said, that like put on voice of they make their voice like very high and kind of innocent, childish. It's really
Hmm.
cringy to listen
Very
to.
creepy.
I'm not even going to try to like mimic it,
Yeah.
but it's very creepy. And
Yep.
they're just women who are being interviewed saying, "Oh, like these children got taken away and we're not doing anything wrong," blah blah blah, are women themselves who have firsthand seen child brides and then just lying and saying, "No, we've never heard of any instances of children being married off." And
It was very like Manson family creepy, like just the a real taste of like the, and I don't know what the impression was publicly of that, if it was like this is clearly effed up or like dang we shouldn't have taken these kids, you know what I mean? I don't know what that was, like '08 or something along those lines, so
yeah,
I
I
was
think
pretty young.
so. I was
Yeah.
like what, like a junior in high school, and I don't remember like paying attention to it, I guess, but
Hmm.
uh
Yeah, I think I remember the footage of like the dresses and the hair and like the compound, but I don't, it didn't like clock for
it
me.
blends in my head though with Waco anyway. Like
Yeah.
I think of them as being like the same time period, and they're
Hmm.
not.
Yeah, Waco's like the '80s, isn't it?
I think it's early 90s.
Okay.
But I mean, it's not like, they're over a decade apart, but I still just think of them happening like concurrently.
Yeah. A lot of similar themes, I guess, but yeah.
Right.
Um, and they end up returning the kids. Like, spoiler, and they felt like their hands were tied. I don't know what, they just didn't have what they needed to like justify keeping the kids. It's hard to imagine being those social services workers who had to take them back after they talk about the bus loads and bus loads and bus loads of kids they had to take out. Like they couldn't get a bus full enough to get all those kids out of
Yeah, they
there.
had like 500 or so
Yeah.
kids around there.
It held in like basically detention centers because they had just what looks like a room full of cots that they just keep these kids in. Like it wasn't. Unfortunately, they needed a lot more resources to be able to do
It
that.
wasn't sustainable or anything to keep
Yeah.
them there, but to put them back in that environment was not the right call, in my
Yeah.
opinion. But
Right.
then this is, I guess, probably the part where it gets the most difficult to watch is them actually breaking into the temple. With the help of Rebecca, the sheriff asked Rebecca to help with investigating Zion and everything, and then breaking into the temple
Hmm.
that was there, which was
And all what they found. Yeah. I guess I don't know that I want to hammer on the details of all that. I mean, essentially, there's evidence of everything that has been happening. The child bride's as young as 13, 14 years old. There's records of everything written in like a
mhm.
safe that they have to crack or like bust into.
Yeah, it's like a vault,
Um,
and they couldn't
yeah.
crack into it with like breaking with the code or whatever, so they jackhammer into the vault to get in.
recordings of ceremonies, like the marriage ceremonies and like assault of these young girls, and evidence that there was a lot of witnesses to those situations, like a room's full of people while they assaulted some of these girls.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, just like it did. I knew it was dark, and it just took such a graphic.
I kind of sat there watching it with my hand over my mouth,
Yep.
just sort of horrified and
Yep.
just very sad for these young girls, and very angry for any, especially any adults. I don't care if you're brainwashed. The fact that you were
Yeah.
witnessing that and didn't do anything.
A lot of adults.
A
It
lot of
wasn't just
adults.
it wasn't just a few. It was like it was part of the culture that they witnessed these things. Like it
Hmm.
wasn't just the people in power who knew what was
Yeah.
happening. It was like well established part of their
And again,
life.
just the fact that you don't have the wherewithal, like the empathy of when it happened to you and how horrible it was for you, then to see it happening to someone else and you
Yep.
stay silent, is never going to be something I'll understand. And it's very hard to
Mhm.
um, forgive, I guess, in
Yeah.
that respect. I mean, we obviously all hate Warren Jeffs for his terribleness, but we do have to. There were a lot of other adults who were complicit and
Mhm.
brainwashed or no. I don't care. That
Mhm.
at the end of the day, children were severely
Yeah.
hurt in this. But I mean, so just note, if you do watch it, the last half of episode 4 is very hard to watch. But in a light note, I mean, I was again just blown away by the strength of the women that were interviewed in this documentary and their strength to leave and to face down Warren and their community and to build new lives for themselves is very impressive.
Yeah. Um Definitely. I mean, I was talking to hashtag Pastor Jake about this the other day because he's familiar with it, but he himself is like, I don't think I can. He's familiar with the story, doesn't but didn't watch the doc. He's like, I don't think I can watch that. There's just no bright spot that comes out of it. There's just no like because you can look at problems in the religion as a whole, but you could say it's a lifestyle that works for some people. Like if we're talking about the Browns or just Mormons in
Hmm.
general, like it's not it just produces like certain values in people that aren't all evil and bad.
Hmm.
Um and some are just straight up normal like pretty standard life for that people lead. It's not like, but this particular situation there's just no redeeming element that comes from it, and you watch it and you walk away feeling not good. Like you don't watch it and walk away like, "Huh, interesting." You're like, "Man, I feel bad." Like you just feel rotten and bad. Um so yeah, I mean the bright spot is it's even hard to call it a bright spot, but like that there's power in what happened to those women and the fact that they spoke up and are going against their community and their humongous families and the humongous community and the power that's still there because he's still like kind of puppeting everything from jail.
Yeah.
um
But I mean, I will say that at least you can look to those women as pillars of resilience,
yeah.
that you can have absolutely unthinkable, terrible things happen to you and you can still make something of your life. I mean, like, look at
Mhm.
Elisa out riding around her motorcycle and stuff, and Ruby
Yeah.
getting a tattoo, and they're drinking beer, and they have a pretty solid friendship, it looks like.
Mhm.
And yeah, I mean, they're never gonna get over the trauma of what they've experienced, but they are very, very strong. And that part, at least for me, was inspiring, even as difficult as the rest of it was.
Yes. Yeah. um that's really all you can say, and like to hear them throw around the word sister as in plural marriage, it's just such a weird, it's almost jarring because I associate those words so strongly with the Browns and the show
Right.
Sister Wives, and like the lightness that we have with that whole
Yeah.
our main like thing we do here, and like the term when we use those terms it's to talk about Robin and Mary and Janelle and like the very modern very typical family that they lead, and when it just has such a like a connotation that's just so like
So you can imagine then what the Browns feel when they see this,
Yeah,
that you're like tainting something that is
this
a
culture that
family of
they,
love for them and a connection, that you're really tainting it with this.
yeah.
And
So, anyways, um, yeah, I guess that kind of wraps up this summary. I mean, I don't know. It's we really did not dip into the darkest parts. I mean, we talked about the dark parts. We didn't detail them the way this show does.
yeah.
So if you still haven't watched it and you're considering it, just every time I tell someone to watch it or talk about it with someone, I'm like, it is so dark. Like I
And
watched
I'd
it, it was
say,
interesting, but it is so like just I don't want it to seem like I'm like promoting it to for everybody to watch because it's not for everyone for
yeah.
sure.
And I would
Yeah.
say if you want to watch a little bit and not the darker parts, like if you can handle some part, you can watch like parts 1 and 2, which are still quite
Hmm.
dark, and still difficult things, but it does get a lot darker in the second half of the.
Yeah.
So maybe gauge, watch one
Either
part and then see how you feel, and then before you decide if you want to go on, because it will get darker.
it really does build as it goes. So
Yeah.
like if part one is too much, I would say stop there.
Then stop.
Like
Stop.
it's
Don't
yeah.
watch anymore.
Yep.
Just move on, watch something else.
But yeah, thank you for listening. And we'll have another bonus coming out to recap the show of Under the Banner of Heaven coming out. And you can like and follow us on Instagram and talk to us if you want to. Right now it's still just Alex.
Hey, Alex.
But we do love you, Alex. um but we're open to anybody who wants to chat with us. Thank you.